مجمع الأندلس التعليمي، تعلم عصري ملهم بهوية وطنية وقيم إسلامية.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Hello everyone, here is Mr. Ayman. I'm happy to meet you once again. A new written lesson, the same unit, the same module, endurance. And our objectives for today are: answer questions about the development of events after reading a story. We want as well to complete the table with functions of full narrative elements or parts of a plot development. We want also to learn about weak and strong adjectives, and we aim to plan to write a story, which you will do as a homework. Ready? You'll need your student's book, page 28 and 29, your workbook, page 23, 24, and 25. But before that, let's learn or relearn some terminology and words that we will need along this lesson. Do you know any words that we generally use to refer to those ideas? The first one, we want a word to mean the main events of a play, novel, film, or similar work or works, devised and presented by the writer as an interrelated sequence or separate parts or blocks. We want also a term or a word to refer to the most important event in the story, which is generally a serious problem. We want to know which word we use to refer to people in the story. We want to know what is the part of the story's plot where the main problem, or what we have called climax, is resolved or worked out. We want also a word to refer to the action of introducing something, and of course in the story it is the first part where the setting is introduced. And finally, we need a word to refer to the background, the place and the time of events. Do you know any? Let's start from the beginning. Ready? So these are the words and terms we need along our lesson. We use the word plot to refer to the main events of a story. The word climax represents or talks about the most important point, event, and action in the story. As we said, it is generally a problem. Characters are the persons and the people found in the story. The resolution is how the problem is resolved. The introduction presents or introduces the place, the time, and the background, and these are known as the setting. And to your student's book, as you'll be asked at the end of this lesson to write your own story, here you are given a story to read and to answer some questions. I highly advise you, whenever you have a reading text with questions to answer, to start with the questions. So let's first read these questions. Anyone to do it? Yes, please, the door is yours. In which paragraph is the main character of the story introduced? 2. Where does the story take place? The third question is, What tenses does the writer use throughout the story? The next question is, which event do you think forms the climax of the story? In which paragraph does it take place, and how does the main character feel? The fifth question, does the atmosphere of the story change after the climax? How? The next question, why does the writer use direct speech? And the last question is, which adjectives or adjective phrases does the writer use to describe the character's feelings? Now you can go back to your text, pause the video and read it. And tell me when you are over with this story. You came back so fast. So the first question, in which paragraph is the main character of the story introduced? In the first paragraph, great. Where does the story take place? On a boat. What tenses are used? The past simple, the past continuous, the past perfect simple, great. And which event do you think forms the climax of the story? The event forming the climax of the story is when the main characters sees something in the water and the other members of the crew gather on the deck to see what it is. And this is found in the third paragraph. The fifth question is about the atmosphere, and we really found that the atmosphere of the story changes after the climax, and the proof is that the characters calm down. We want to know why the writer used the direct speech, and this to make the story more interesting, to involve the reader, to invite him to share the writer's ideas and feeling, and to attract his attention. The last question is about adjectives or adjective phrases, and we can find in shock, panicked, sick with fear. Yes, you don't have any space to write all these in your book. You can write these in your copybook or in your register, and you can just do as your friend did, just few notes. Here we finished with the first part of this question, the 7 questions, and we still have a mission to complete. We have a table with the different parts and elements of the plot development, namely the introduction, the rise in action, the climax, the fall in action, and the conclusion. We want to know what each of these refers to, or what pieces of information it represents. And the choices are: we have a part that shows the main event of the story. A second one gives extra detail and introduces a problem. A third one shows how the characters react after the event. And the last one shows how everything goes back to normal. Have the time to think of it. And here are the answers. The rise in action gives extra detail and introduces a problem. Of course, the introduction presents the main character and sets the scene, means it informs about the time and the place. The climax shows the main and the most important event of the story, generally a problem. After that, we have the fall in action, and it shows how the characters react after the event and what they do to resolve the problem. By the end, we reach the conclusion where everything goes back to normal. Generally, some morals and lessons are learned. I think as we have answered these questions, we learned about the narrative or the story elements or parts, or about the plot. So a plot is the structure or organization. It's imaginary. It's not found in your writing and in the story itself as a book, but it is a structure or organization of events that make up a fictional story. We start with the introduction, or also called the exposition. Here, the character and the setting are introduced. Next, we have a succession of events, one after the other, that lead to the climax. It is a turning point, a point of greatest suspense, generally, as I said, a problem. Here we reach the top of events of our plot, and here begins the following action, which refers to the events that occur after the climax that lead generally to the resolution. Sometimes these are attempts and trials and ideas to find a solution to the problem or to the climax. By the end, the conflicts or problems are solved, and generally it is associated with a lesson or a moral. As I said, in your writing, we won't find this order. In fact, when you write a story, you will start with the exposition, where you introduce the characters, the setting, the time, the place, the general background. Next, you write your rise in action. As I said, it is the sum of events that lead to the climax. What comes next is the climax, the most important event, and after that, the falling action, and the attempts or the events that lead to the resolution and the salvation of the problem and to the morals. Here is a possible plot line as it may appear in your trial. And now you can think about an unforgettable accident which happened to you and tell it to your brother, mate, or anyone of your relatives, but don't write it for the moment, because we have some vocabulary items to learn. Have a look on these pictures and think of some adjectives to refer to or to describe. Yes? Please don't talk all together. Yes? Furious. Boiling, why not? Yes, fascinating, great. Gorgeous. Astonished. Filthy. And starving. Yes, Hamad, you don't know these words and you want to know to each picture, each adjective refers to? Yes, you're right. You're right, and that's your right. So, dear students of grade 10, Which picture represents or explains the adjective furious? Yes, extremely angry, great. What about boiling? Here, when the water is terribly or extremely hot. What about gorgeous? Beautiful, only beautiful, or really beautiful? What about fascinating? So interesting, really interesting, astonished, really surprised, filthy, extremely dirty, and starving, so hungry. Great. What I noticed each time you explain the word, that you have used two words, an adverb and an adjective. This leads us to talk about strong and weak adjectives. Strong adjectives are a stronger version of other more common adjectives, often called weak adjectives, like freezing, which means very cold. Note that freezing and cold have a similar meaning, but freezing is stronger than the weak version of this adjective or this idea. The same with weak adjectives, we use adverbs such as very, really, extremely, incredibly, terribly, and little or little bit to describe their intensity. Adverbs like really, completely, absolutely, and totally are generally linked to strong adjectives. And here you have a set of some adjectives, weak adjectives, related or preceded by an adverb, and we need the equivalent form or the equivalent strong adjective. Pause the video and think of it. Ready? So, very tired, exhausted, very scared, panicked, very big, enormous, possibly to use huge as well, very bad, dreadful, and very surprising, incredible. To the task D, and as you learned about strong and weak adjectives, and as you accumulated a set of adverbs to join or to combine with the adjectives to get these strong versions of the adjectives, read the 7 sentences and try to replace the strong adjective with an adjective, of course, preceded by the appropriate adverb. Pause the video and think of it. Yes, Radi, take number 1. I was furious with myself when I lost my mobile phone. I think Mr. Furious can replace incredibly angry, for example. Excellent, Radi. Jason? It's boiling outside. We should go for a swim. Boiling here, Mr. means extremely hot. Great. To Hamad? I watched a fascinating documentary about dolphins last night. I think fascinating can mean really interesting. Great. Another student for the 4th example. My cousin Stephanie has gorgeous blue eyes. Gorgeous means really beautiful or very beautiful. Can I do the next example? Yes, the door is yours. I was astonished to hear that Frank got tired. I know this word, Mr. Astonished, means terribly surprised. I was not happy about that. The sixth example. Your hands are filthy. You'd better wash them before dinner. Filthy, Mr. means extremely dirty. And the last example. I haven't had anything for breakfast and I'm starving. I don't know this word, Mr., but as I have nothing to eat, this means I am hungry, and probably I'm so hungry or very hungry. Yes, I did it. Thank you. You did it in a perfect way. Yes, again, you don't know where to write all these. Okay, just follow your friend. He did it in this way. You can pause the video and write down all the answers. And here we have finished with the vocabulary section, and we should prepare ourselves to face the giant and write our story. It's in the same page, task A. Someone to read the instruction. Read the written task and underline the key words, then answer the questions. Go the distance. Our magazine is looking for new short stories about adventure and survivals. Your story must include a tent and a car. The questions are: why are you writing this story? Who will read it? Who is your target? And what should the story be about? Here are the answers. I'm writing the story to entertain the readers, and the readers are my target. The readers of the magazine will read my story, of course. My story should be about adventure and survival. Great. To F after E. Think about the following questions, then, if you have someone to talk with, talk in pairs. Introduction. We find answers to these questions in the introduction. Who is the main character? Where is the story set, and what is the place or the weather like? The reason action answers the following question. What is the main character doing? Is anyone with him? The climax is about what is the main event of the story, what do the characters do, say, think, feel, and how is the event resolved. If you want answers to these two questions, go to the following action, and the questions are: how do the characters respond to what happened, and what do they do to try to get everything back to normal? The conclusion will tell you what happens in the end and how do the characters feel afterwards. Generally, it also answers the question, what do we learn from this story? You can use these as a tool to prepare your story. So, who is the main character? Salim, Ali and I, why not? Where? Turkey, Istanbul, hotel. The weather is good, everything is okay. What is the main character doing? You are in a holiday, visiting restaurants, ordering meals. What happened exactly, or what was the problem? Oops, you realized you had no money, no cards, no wallets, nothing. How will you pay? And how the manager or the owner of the restaurant will behave with you? You called the hotel and they found what you needed in your room? Great. How did you respond? You felt embarrassed? And you called the hotel? Great. Yes, I asked the question about the director. He was comprehensive. What happened next? You were happy? Because things didn't go to a worse point? And you decided to never leave your room unless you check everything. I will do the same. Great. So you have some materials to use to write your story, but before that, read the tip below. When writing a story, use past tenses. Keep the plot simple and divide your story into one paragraph for each stage. Try to make your story interesting by using direct speech, questions, exclamations. Use a variety of adverbs and weak and strong adjectives. Use figurative language like idioms, expressions, metaphors, comparisons, and the like. Here are some examples. Froze in shock or fear, nearly jumped out of his skin or mind, couldn't believe his eyes and ears. And go to page 23 and have a look on your plot. Don't forget that the introduction describes the setting, time, place, weather, and introduces the main character or characters. That the main part, which varies between 2, 3, 4 paragraphs, describes the series of events that lead up to the climax. We have a rising action, a climax, and a falling action. And the conclusion describes what happened in the end and make a short comment. If you still remember, we have done this with the story of Amos Richards. So from there you can gather some expressions, some adjectives, some adverbs, some ideas. And now you can write your plan. It can be as follows. Pause the video and read it. So the characters are Ravi, Salim and you. The events happen during a summer holiday in a fire in 2015 in Turkey, exactly in Istanbul, and more precisely in a restaurant. You left the hotel to a Burak restaurant. You asked about the best dishes. You ordered many delicious foods, drinks, and the like. To realize that you had no money, you called the hotel. That was smart, and they sent what you needed. At a certain point you were anxious, and at the end you were happy, as things didn't go to a worse point, or to a worst point, you can say that. You learned to check your papers and money before buying or ordering anything. even before leaving the hotel. So this is your plot. Try to write your paragraph. The best will be shown in the next video. Here we are at the end. See you so soon, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
مجمع الأندلس التعليمي، تعلم عصري ملهم بهوية وطنية وقيم إسلامية.